TitleMatchNetwork.com.
After it was during the Bobby Blaze thing, Dory and Terry had come in. We did some stuff in Marietta, and I was starting to be around Junior a little bit, and he got me booked for Baba. While I was in Japan, Tammy drove up to visit her mom. She picked me up in LaGuardia, and we went by the Meadowlands to see Dr. Tom and Cornette and Del Rey were on the show at the Meadowlands. And that night I met Bruce Prichard, and I met Pat Patterson when I was a kid, and he knew my grandfather, so I introduced myself to him, and they were cool and whatnot. And then that night we drove home to Knoxville. By the time we got home, there was a message on the machine from Bruce saying, "Go to the Knoxville airport, there's a prepaid ticket, you're having a meeting with Vince." So it was, we went right to the airport, we were singing Vince the next day, and he said, "Well, I have possible ideas for you, take these contracts to your lawyer." I'm like, "To my fucking lawyer?"
Right.
I'm like, contract, I've already cut off my right arm and give it to him, but then, we got home and I was like, man, Baba had offered me like 10 weeks a year. I was like, well, do I want to go and do that and still stay in Smoky Mountain where I really kind of felt at home? Or do I want to, do this? Go where you wait your whole life to be at WWF. And the thing that made me, choose that was they were giving both of us a job, and I was a very annoying person to live with at that point, because you figured you'd be in a position where all these people want you, but I was real scared, didn't know what the right decision was to be.
Right. Did in the back of your mind at any time, did you say maybe they just want me for Tammy, or was that ever in your head?
Yeah, I'm sure. I thought it, and Vince even said to me in that meeting, he was like, would you be upset eventually if we split you up? He's like, she could be a big star. You can have a job, but you can be a big star. It just made sense because, there's hundreds of wrestlers, and there's only been very few girls, and in my mind, none that were ever nearly any as good. Trish is finally starting to do promos somewhat well, but they're scripted out.
Right.
Where then, like when she did the Godwin thing where she got slopped, Jim Ross said, "Look, you got 5 minutes. You hate finish, you love him, you hate him, you get slopped." And that was all the direction we got, and it was live to tape. And she went out and did it. So I'm sure they, had we not been together, I don't think they would have followed me as much. But at the same time, I was a new guy that people were talking about. So I think I at least helped my own.
Jimmy was cool when you told him that you gave your notice there, basically.
Well, what I had found out later was that Shane McMahon actually had called Jimmy a couple months earlier, and he kayfabed me on the whole deal because he wasn't done with what I was doing yet. But then he knew. But by the time we left the Meadowlands and we're driving home, he had already known that we were there and that they were calling us and stuff like that. So he was cool about it. He just said, can you finish up and stuff. And I was not in any rush to get out of there, especially after you signed the contract. There was no guaranteed money, but just the fact that you were under contract, they started mailing you. It was like $250 a week.
Right.
But I was making $400 for Cornette, plus $250 a week for me, $250 a week for her from Vince, and her $75 a night for Cornette. At the time, I thought I was like a millionaire. Huh. So I was thrilled to death to be doing that.
Nice. So now you're back in the States and stuff like that. You're working for Vince. What was that experience like in the beginning? Like, what were your initial impressions of the Fed?
I fucking hated it.
Right off the bat?
Right off the fucking bat, I hated it. They, because here I was now, Memphis, I'd learned some from the guys, but I really wasn't used well enough and done anything with being as young as I was to really learn as much. Learned about stuff in the ring, but not much more. But Cornette, really, I hung out with him a lot, and for some reason, guys like Cornette, even though he learned how to be more diplomatic a little bit over the years, but like Eddie Gilbert, those kind of guys, for some reason, enamored me, because I just always wanted to be, like I said, like Doug Summers, the guy to make somebody else look good and not be the star. But something about guys like Eddie, who they were like rebellious and bumped the system and stuff. Well, as a kid, you think it's cool to be fucking rebellious. And later on in life, I realized it wasn't all that smart. But and a lot of Jimmy's mannerisms, came off on me, because I just thought, you're very, stuff rubs off on you when you're a kid. And I was still like 20 years old, I'm 21, I think, at the time. So we get to Vince starts flying us back and forth from Knoxville to New York. Tammy starts doing the live event news thing. And they didn't know what they were doing with me yet. Then they said, we have some great characters. We're going to fly to the New York office to get your costumes made. And this lady's put me in a powder blue singlet with a big thing on the front, like a big explosion or something. I'm like, what the hell am I? And I said, we don't know the name of your character yet. But remember Vince did that deal with that Brady Boone with the mask, like a thunder cat kind of thing? He wanted to be somebody like a Mighty Mouse character. A short, like fire plug kind of guy. And I said, I'm a horrible babyface. And then, you know, I don't really do a lot of high-flying stuff. I mean, the stuff I was doing, I did some stuff at the time that was, I mean, cool for then, but I mean, nothing that was all that spectacular. And I knew I was not a good baby face. Now it's different because when you're established, I mean, you can just do your same shit, and if you're doing it to a heel, people cheer you. But I wasn't confident in it. So our first night at TV, didn't even have a name for us yet. We were Chris and Tammy Team Spirit. And we went out, and she was formerly a cheerleader, but this was much earlier in life. And when you have a partner doing stunts, the guy throwing you up usually knows what the fuck he's doing. I had no idea what I was doing. So we're there all afternoon. I'm in this fucking stupid cape and these Shazam things on my arms and stuff. And we had to go out, and her outfit ended up looking pretty much the same. We had to go out, and all afternoon we're practicing this entrance. And I'm just getting hot. I'm like, I'm here to fucking wrestle, not do an entrance. Which, I mean, now I understand that was much more important than the match was, but I just was a wise ass trying to be a rebel back then. So I'm walking around, and I'm kicking my cape and blowing my nose in it, and I'm cursing like Cornette. He's like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, when I yell like him, I all of a sudden I get a southern accent. And so I'm yelling, "These stupid motherfuckers!" Then like Rene Goulet comes and gives me and Reno Riggins the match. He said, "We just want you to have a match. Just do a bunch of spots that don't make any sense." I said, "Well, why the fuck am I going to do that? I took all this time. Now I think I kind of know what I'm doing. You want me to do something that makes no sense?" And they said, "Well, that's what Vince wants." I said, "Well, why?" "Well, it's not my fucking job to ask why. My job as an employee is to do what you're told." But me, like a dick, asked why. They're apparently going to cut it up and make a music video out of it or something to show me doing some cool things. I didn't really have any cool things that I did. So me and Reno Riggins went out. Me and Tammy did our entrance. That was horrible. My cape like flopped over my face and I couldn't fucking get it off. And then me and Reno did a bunch of spots. He's going under a leapfrog and he slips and he tore his groin. It was fucking horrible. So then we go home and Jim Ross is like, "Well, you know, we'll give you a call." I'm like, "Man, these checks are going to stop. I'm not going back. Like maybe Bob will take me back and I'll just stay here in Tennessee." I was so fucking hot. And then he ends up calling me. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. And Buddy Landell had called me at like 5:30 for what I don't know. I was like, "Buddy, I'm sleeping." I hung up the phone. 4 half hour later, I'm like, "What the fuck do you want?" It's Jim Ross. It's like, "Oh my God." He's like, "Chris," he's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "I thought it was Buddy Landell." He's like, "Well, fuck, why you hate Buddy?" I'm like, "I don't, but it's 6 o'clock in the morning." And he's like, "How do you feel about being a heel?" I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." So we went back up and they gave us, you know, our new gimmick, and which I wasn't thrilled with being called Skip, but again, I think it might have been smarter for me to have stayed in Japan and stayed in Smoky Mountain a little bit longer because while my work might have been good enough to be there at the time, I wasn't mature enough to be there. You know, you needed to really understand more of what was in the bigger picture to have done it correctly. Had I just, you know, maybe kept my mouth shut and paid more attention to just going off the handle immediately, it might have, you know, I might have enjoyed it better.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.